just a message from Professor Wamba. He sent his greetings to friends. He suffered from heartbeat, irregular heartbeat, so he had to go and see a cardiologist. That's why he couldn't be here. He sends his greetings to friends and others. So, yes, I noticed that on the program I was listed as DRC, partly because of my hesitation as to how to list myself, since I'm a sort of vagabond. I go back and forth now between California, where we live part of the year, and Brazil, where I started going in 2007, invited by the University of Federal University of Bahia. I don't want to spend too much time on these personal things, but I would like to touch on 5 points. First of all, I want to point out, as I said to IB, in fact, that celebration, I shall do it in the way in which I learned to do it at the University of Dar es Salaam, where I first met Mahmood in 1975. In other words, we would battle, and then after the battle, we would go and have a beer at the sort of bar down the street. I remember famously when Professor Ranger came to Dar es Salaam. He came from Zimbabwe, and he was surprised that he was not being invited to speak at the university. Eventually, he was invited to speak at the university, and everyone was there at this Thursday seminar, which actually had been inaugurated by Ranger himself. Everyone was there, including Mahmood, and Professor Ranger was so criticized when he was taken back to his hotel by one of our colleagues. He said to this colleague, "You know, I felt as if I was a graduate student." Because, yes, that's what Thursday seminars were all about. You battle, and then you discuss, you engage, etc. I'm going to touch on 5 points. One is globalization of what? 2, I'm going to talk about a thesis. I was part of the examination board. It happened in February 9th at the University of Campinas, and the thesis was in Portuguese, Tacteando o Indizível, something like looking for how to say the unsayable. And I think that is a very, very crucial point if one is going to decolonize African history, in fact, to decolonize the mindset of colonization. And then the third point, which in fact is really throughout my presentation, is the role of Cheikh Anta Diop in actually decolonizing knowledge, long before really anyone, and then followed, of course, by Aiku Arma, who set up a publishing outfit, but much more than a publishing outfit, a group known as Shemshu Bak, which is a cooperative translating ancient Egyptian texts so that they could be available to anybody who is interested in making sure that African history does not just simply start from ancient Greece or ancient Rome. And then the fourth point, I don't know whether I'm going to have this time. He's already cutting his pieces of paper. The issue of artificial intelligence and human intelligence. I think it is upon us. It's part of this crisis. And I'm going to try and explain how I understand this artificialization of human intelligence by one particular group to present it as the only one. And in the conclusion, my point is that I have 10 minutes, I've been told. The conclusion is that it seems to me that if humanity is going to save itself in the face of the destruction, dehumanization of capitalism, then one has to do away with hierarchization of knowledge in the same way that, yes, it's easy to do away with hierarchization of race, but then that has to be followed by de-hierarchization of knowledge. How do we know? Let's suppose, just imagine, aren't those people in the equatorial forest must have seen long before the scientists that there was something wrong in the atmosphere. They must have felt it, but who did they have to go and say there was something wrong around the planet? Right? The Mbuti, the Batwa, as IB said. Okay, globalization of what? Very, very quickly, because the minutes are flying. If one looks at the current situation, you can't just simply say capitalism, because capitalism, the way it is today, is a cumulative impact of genocide of the Native Americans, the indigenous people, everywhere on the planet. It's the cumulative injustices provoked by enslavement, colonization, apartheid, and now neoliberalism. In other words, the pillars of capitalism are so powerful and so embedded in previous phases that to destroy it, you actually have to go back and see, for example, how the Native Americans, Crazy Horse, Black Elk, reacted to how they were being wiped out from the surface of the planet, and how other people felt that. But how do you do that? We don't know. But then we enter into this arena where we say we need reparation. How are we going to calculate reparation and then be paid in the currency of that very process of destruction and dehumanization? My view is that it is impossible to calculate reparation. And therefore, the best way one can do this is actually move away from the system as radically as possible. And so, this thesis, looking for the unsayable, briefly from my own experience, that's why I felt that this thesis really needs to be published as quickly as possible. The thesis is a dialogue between Isabel Noronha, a filmmaker, psychoanalyst at the same time. She did a fantastic movie on the great artist in Mozambique, Malangatana. And it's a dialogue between her and Camilo Souza, who entered the ranks of Frelimo very, very young and fought in the liberated zones, and then found himself confronted with reactions, statements that he thought that he had done something wrong and he should never have entered Frelimo. For example, he arrives in Dar es Salaam, there are 6 people around the table, and one of them stands up and shouts that we have a CIA agent among ourselves. So immediately Camilo figures, I've taken the wrong decision. And he doesn't know who to speak to. That's unsayable. So eventually, somebody who was around the table the next day goes and talks to him. He's trying to figure out how to leave Dar es Salaam. And the guy says to him, look, this guy, this person, really, that's what he does. But the point is, nobody around the table defended Camilo. Now, unsayable. Look, people have asked me, why did you keep your Belgian name, or etc. People, our process, speaking about citizenship, there was a time we were non-existent as mulattoes. My father, who was taking care of the education, did not know where we should go for an education. Should we go to a white school, or should we go to a semi-demi school, as my older brother used to say, describing ourselves, or should we go to a black school? My father had been told, if you marry this woman, 5 minutes, yes, okay. If you marry this woman, forget about your career. But my father wanted to marry my mother. My mother barely knew how to write her name. But my mother's knowledge was unfathomable. This is, of course, something that I learned along the way. At the table, at home, we spoke Swahili and French. She never wanted to speak French because she knew that we, the kids, were going to laugh at the mistakes, etc. But she understood French. So I learned from that kind of position that you find yourself not being able to say something. When a Jesuit at the school eventually tried to kiss me, I resisted, crying. He didn't succeed. But who was I going to speak to? And there's a famous text from ancient Egypt discussion of a man between his bar. And that text, there is a part of the text that says, to whom shall I speak today? He is desperate, this person. And it goes on for about 15 stanzas. And it's exactly like today. Who shall I speak today in this kind of situation? It's chaos. Friends are no longer friends. Brothers are no longer brothers. Everyone is stealing from everybody. That is a dispute of a man between his bar. We haven't done that one, our little group, but we did something, a text that exists, but we have done it and translated in 9 African languages and 3 colonial languages. And that text is known as the Eloquent Peasant. Here, in that text, you have a peasant really giving a lesson to the Pharaoh about what justice is about. Even though the Pharaoh, according to knowledge, the Pharaoh is supposed to be the person who is really the guarantor of justice, etc. And of course, when I'm leaving school, could I have 2-3 extra minutes, Mr. Chair? I'm getting to the 4th point, but when I'm leaving school, the rector of the school advises me. Now, my mother had just passed the year before. He advises me, he says, I hope you marry a white person. Who am I going to talk about this? To my father? So you are left not knowing what to say. And this is universal. So if there is going to be decolonization, then there has to be that kind of opening up of these archives of the unthinkable, of the unsayable, etc. And that leads, of course, yes, to de-hierarchization of knowledge. Artificial intelligence versus human intelligence. Instinctively, people say that human intelligence is superior to artificial intelligence. But what are we seeing today? That artificial intelligence is actually taking over. Humans are being dehumanized. Humans are being robotized. Because people say, oh, well, the robots are produced by human intelligence. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I got 2 minutes. I forgot to say something that is crucial. I have not touched really on the details about Cheikh Anta Diop's work, but there is a movie, a documentary, known as Kemtiu. It's available in a DVD at Présence Africaine in Paris. The French version, the original, is available for 25 euros or $25. And it's a fantastic documentary. I've seen it about 6 or 7 times, and every time I see it, I see things, I understand things I did not understand before. Cheikh Anta Diop was the decolonizer way ahead of his time. And one of the persons who has best understood that is Aikwe Arma. Aikwe Arma understood Cheikh Anta Diop pretty much like nobody else, maybe, except Cheikh Mbake Diop, the son of Cheikh Anta Diop, who wrote the biography. So I'm trying to point out that there are voices who have kind of remained muted, sidelined, that really have to be heard. And I used to learn, I learned to say, Cheikh Anta is okay, but there are problems. Of course there are problems. But Cheikh Anta said things that were not sayable. And that's why Senghor, for example, made sure that he was sidelined. When he presented, he defended his thesis, 6 hours, almost 7 hours, without a paper. He frightened the examination board. And the examination board made sure that he got a grade below what would allow him to actually teach at university level and supervise research. So this is my appeal. And I hope that we have questions, and then we can talk more than these few minutes that we are given respite of. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, for your generosity.